raise your hand, Larry will call on you. We're not going to take pictures of anybody, confidentiality for one, and we usually don't use names in that. So after he turns it on, please don't ask me questions, because I will say, okay, Deborah, what did you want to... I remember I've done that before. I forget that it's on recording, so I don't want to get anybody in any trouble.
All right, well, here we are in lesson 1 of 12. It's great to start a new semester. Once again, we got interrupted during the last one back in March. Weren't able to finish it. So here we go again. This is blended families. This is basically the post-marital. I was chatting with somebody the other day, and they were concerned that we didn't specifically state that blended families was post-marital. It was like, it didn't say anywhere that it was post-marital. We have premarital, and we got beyond divorce, and then we got blended families, and it didn't say that it was post-marital. So I updated the website. But this is basically, you're already in a blended family, and we want to help you avoid stepping on any more landmines than you've already stepped on, and just try to do the blending a lot easier. So,
well, it's also, is this on? It's also for people dating and engaged couples and singles to know what God is trying to guide you in for a godly marriage. So it's informational for several different areas, okay?
So this first one is, what is a godly marriage? So first thing we want to do is establish a solid foundation for a godly marriage. And some of the scriptures here are Genesis 1:26 and 1:27, where we see God creates man in his image from the dust of the earth. Okay? Now, some of the more important things is God creates man in his image. So he's created this human being in his image with basically all the attributes of God. And then he gives this man, who knows how long, but sometime he names all the animals, and so it's, I'm sure it takes a while to do all that, right? A lot of animals out there. And then he finally says, okay, all this stuff is good, but it's not good for man to be alone. So then he creates woman from the man, right? So what's really going on here? Well, God created a full image of himself in the man, but it's not good for that image to be by itself. So he creates, what's easy for me to kind of get my head wrapped around is he took the female part of, because God is really all male, female, all in one, right? The whole image of God includes all the male and all the female attributes. So he took the female attributes of his image out of the man and made a woman. Okay? Now, through this process, he creates the institution of marriage, and Adam had the opportunity to name this thing. He said, you know, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, you came out of me, you will be called woman. So we have a man, now we have a woman. But one of the more important things to get here is God created this one being in his image, and then he took some of that out and made another being, and then told them to be one flesh. So God still wants his original image that he created to be complete, to be intact. But the only way he can do that now is for the man and the woman to become one flesh, right? Because now they're two pieces, but they need to be one flesh and one total image that represents God. So we have the one man, one woman equals one flesh, and the bottom line here is God wanted his image that he created, starting with Adam. He wanted that image to be propagated throughout the planet, but now he's got the man and the woman, and they have to be one together to be able to do that. So it's his image. He wants, he told them, go forth and multiply, take dominions, or he gave them a purpose, which was to take dominion, to multiply, fulfill the earth, and all that. So it was his image that he wanted spread all over the place. He wanted the planet to look like a bunch of people in his image. So that's kind of the definition of marriage. It's a man and a woman representing God in the earth. And that's the image that God wants replicated. And not too long after that, Satan came along, deceived Eve. Everybody fell. So now we're all sinners, and we have that to deal with. But still, marriage is spiritual warfare now, and it's still, we want to promote God's image throughout the world. God's order in marriage is the head of man is Christ, the head of woman is man, and the head of Christ is God the Father. So we have, basically you have a little diagram here. So in the kingdom we have God the Father, we have the Son, and then the bride, which is the church. And basically you have the Holy Spirit, which is empowering the church to do what the church needs to do. So you got the Father, you got the Son, you got the Holy Spirit, kind of surrounding like another circle around the church there. But in marriage we have Christ, and then we have the husband, and then we have the wife. There are 3 types of submission that we need to talk about here. There's always the conversation, where wives are supposed to submit to the husband, and that's generally all that the men like to say. That, period. Wives submit, period. Well, they don't get that.
I can say thank you.
You're good? All right. So the first submission.
You just submitted.
Huh?
You just submitted.
Did he submit?
Did I really?
You did.
I moved, didn't I? Okay.
You
So
didn't have a choice.
somebody's got to watch out for me, right? My help me.
You read.
Yeah. So the first one is each person, the husband, see down there the wife, up and up to Christ, and then the husband up to Christ. So the very first submission that needs to happen is each individual in what we call the vertical relationship to God. Each person has that as their number one responsibility, is to have that submission to Christ. The second one is over there. There's a little arrow that's got arrow things on either end. So it's up and down, back and forth. So it's submitting one to another as equals, right? And then the third one is the wife to the husband. So you got to get the first 2 before the third one's going to happen.
Right.
Guys, if you think I'm the guy, I'm the boss, you got to do what I say because I'm the guy, that's not how this works. Right? You may get obedience, but you will not get submission. It's kind of like when there's a dictator, people submit out of fear and obedience, but it's not out of respect or love or anything like that. So first, each person to God. Second, each person one to another. And the third one is the wife to the husband. And it's so much easier for number 3 to happen when the husband is submitting to God first. You know, it's so much easier to submit to someone who's submitting to a higher power. And they don't think they're the higher power,
Right.
right?
Amen.
So, any questions on that one? Make sense? So, it's all about God. Christ is number 1. We need to follow Him, represent Him, kind of look like Him, and be obedient to Him, and all the blessings flow from that. Okay, so we already talked about that. Okay, so one of the things about this particular lesson is kind of the foundation of this ministry. And after all the years of counseling other people, various couples, we got more and more couples that weren't on their first marriage or even their just first relationship.
Right.
We teach some classes down at the Phoenix Dream Center, and there's a lot of folks that have broken relationships that really had never been married before, but sometimes there's kids, sometimes they're not, but there's a lot of been there, done that multiple times, and now they need to figure out how to do it right going forward. So, pull this up here. So, the foundation of this ministry really is this pyramid here.
Let me hold for you.
I was gonna say, I'll do that, Can I'll hold it up here so they can see.
And so we have the 6 different things here, but pretty much every marriage ministry has a triangle where they have God at the top and the husband and the wife down in the bottom corners. And the triangle thing always represents as each individual down here, as they get closer and closer to God, they get closer together because they're coming up to the point. All right, so the very first thing on the priority pyramid here is our, like we were just talking about, our individual vertical relationship. And that is our relationship with God, our relationship with Jesus. Now, that is going to be our eternal relationship. So we have it now, and we'll have it for eternity. So a lot of this is kind of based on time. God tells us don't have any other gods before Him, so that's one of the scriptural references to why He's first, because He's God. And everybody has their own relationship with Him. You know, our salvation doesn't come because our spouse is married or is saved. We have to have that ourselves, right? So, number 1 is God. Number 2 is the marriage, the husband-wife relationship. It is supposed to be a covenant, which is till death do us part. Going back to the Garden of Eden, Adam was given a bride. He didn't, well, even if he went hunting, there wasn't anybody else to find, right? But God brought him a bride. He didn't have to go hunting. God brought somebody to him that He had prepared especially for him. So, God is first because He's eternal. The husband and wife relationship is supposed to be a covenant till death do us part. So that's on earth here until we're gone. And then we still have that eternal relationship. But if we put a spouse before God, then things are already out of order. Right? And in blended families, where things generally start getting messed up is in the parenting. you have your kids, I have my kids. I don't like how you deal with my kids, so, leave my kids alone. And there's just a lot of disagreement and everything about how to parent. The parenting styles are incompatible for some reason. But what really is going on here is when you've been a single parent for so long, you tend to get an attitude that the kids are like your property. You own them. But in actuality, the kids are gifts that are given to you to be good stewards of. So if, like in our case, I inherited 3 kids. We didn't have any of our own, but I became a steward of her kids because God was entrusting me to take care of the kids that she'd already been blessed with, right? But if you have that attitude of being a good steward of what belongs to God, it doesn't really matter whose kids they are. Because now you're going to be
It's funny you should say that because my friend always tells me, Kim, true enough, you have 3 kids, but right now you're renting them until they're 18 years old.
Right,
And
exactly.
then after that, they make their own decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true.
So, be the steward because God wants his kids back. Somewhere 18, 25, somewhere in there, right? Some parents, you're 18, you're out. Others, don't leave yet. Hang
Not
on,
ready to leave
go to
that
college.
fast.
We'll take care of you. But somewhere in that 18, 25, somewhere in there. But you're exactly right. They're adults now, legally, at that point. So now they have to be responsible for themselves. That's what we're talking about giving them back to God. And one of the hardest things there is for a parent to do is to let their kid fall on their face. And then pay for it. Right? Been there, done that, don't want them to have to do it. We know it hurts. We don't want them to have to go through the pain and suffering and everything. But that's usually the way people learn, unfortunately. There's experience and then wisdom. Experience is making the mistake yourself. And hopefully you learn from making your own mistake. Wisdom is learning from someone else's mistake. Right? Somebody did something, it screwed up, it was painful for them. Okay, well, I don't want to do that. And go through what they went through. Again, not stepping on the landmines. So, God is first, husband and wife, till death do us part, parent-child relationships, number 3, give up ownership, be a good steward, and then give them back to God when they're legal adults. Back in the old days, when the kid, and even now today in the Jewish tradition, usually right around age 12, they have bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and that's like when the kid is like an adult now. They have to make up their own mind about some things. And from what I've been taught, up to about that point, children, if something happens to them, it's like they're in heaven. But once they reach that age of 12 or so, now they got to make up their own mind. So they kind of on, God's grace for that first so many years because they just aren't equipped to really know what's going on, right? But they're somewhere about age 12. Now they should be smart enough to realize, the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, and all that kind of stuff. So give up the ownership, be a good steward, and then make sure you give them back to God and let them deal with God. The number 4 one on the pyramid is the extended family and or friends or
Exes.
co-workers,
Exes.
in-laws, outlaws.
This is not on. Exes. It's all right.
It's on.
I speak loud.
So
That's the X's.
in-laws, outlaws, exes, friends, co-workers, all these other people that you interface with. That's number 4. So God, spouse, children, so basically everybody in your household comes before anybody else. Even if it's family, You got to take care of your household. Then the in-laws and outlaws can, you can listen to whatever they have to say. Or people at work, so make sure you get the vertical right, and then all this horizontal stuff works out much better. But when you get married, you're marrying the entire family. Unless you're an orphan, right? So you're not just going to be you and your spouse, especially in a blended family, because somebody's probably got kids already, right? This is a do-over. It's not starting from scratch. So you're going to have in-laws, there could be exes in there, and one of the worst things that can happen is you let the ex manage you. And they will try. Many exes are vindictive. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And they'll it's like their job
Right.
to mess with you.
Yeah.
How can I interfere with your life today? That's what happens when they wake up in the morning, right? So it's important, again, it goes back to number 2. If you got number 2 before number 4, like it's supposed to be, then you and your wife today are working together as a team to manage all these external interactions. If the next calls up at 10 o'clock at night, hey, I need you to come over and change the light bulb, it's like, sorry, I don't work there anymore. Call somebody else. But you want to use the speakerphone whenever you have to contact them, or strictly with email. The one thing you don't want to do, like when an ex-wife is trying to call the ex-husband who's now married to somebody else, you got to have the new spouse involved in all this, at least to where they can hear what's going on. Because if you don't, they're going to start suspecting that you're up to something, there's some kind of side deal going on, and all that kind of stuff. So you need to make sure you put spouse second, right after God, before the kids, and put the kids before all the exes and all that kind of stuff, and so forth. So now you got all the family stuff, you got your spiritual stuff, you got the family stuff. Now the next thing is you got to provide for your family.
You didn't expound on boundaries, healthy boundaries.
Oh yeah, boundaries. Extended family, you got to have boundaries. There's always, crazy Uncle Harry out there. He's family, he's blood relative, but he's a little weird. You want to keep a distance. You can love people from a distance, right? You don't have to be best friends, even with relatives. Some of them, you need a boundary. They're a drunk, they're an addict, they're kind of something else maybe that's not good, Maybe they're just evil.
Or they're continually trying to tell you, hey, you made a mistake last time. Listen to me, this is how you should do it. When they've probably been married themselves 3 or 4 times, right? They're the expert. You don't want to start an argument. It doesn't get anywhere. What we suggest you do is say, I appreciate you bringing that to our attention so they don't think they can speak just to you. We appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and we will pray over that. So it should eliminate it together. The next time they see you, they ask the same thing, say the same thing. We're still praying about that. Thank you, but we're still praying about it. Do not get in a word for word. You're not going to win. But you have to have not only boundaries, but they be healthy boundaries for you and your family.
Right. Again, the big thing is these relationships cannot have a higher priority than anything above it. Right? If any of this is out of order, things are going to be very stressful, chaotic, conflicting. You'll have conflict you'll have to deal with and all that kind of stuff. But once you've got your family sort of in order, you have to provide for the family, so there needs to be a job in there somewhere, some sort of thing that creates an income. But you hear it all the time, like guys especially, they'll be workaholics. They think my job is to provide, and as long as I'm providing, then that tells my family I love them and everything's fine. But there's really no relationships there, right? Nobody ever sees you. Could be the women too. A lot of women are very motivated to work and they're, climbing the ladders and so forth. But any of that stuff that gets out of order, it's definitely going to be a problem. And when things get out of order, it causes a lot of stress on the kids, because now they're not real sure if mom and dad are going to be together for forever and all that. They just, there's a lot of stress for them, and a lot of times they think it's their fault and those kind of things, and you need to help them through all that. But again, just going back, God, marriage, children, everybody else, then the job, because you have to provide for the family. And then the last one here is ministry. We see things get messed up a lot when it comes to ministry. Basically, it's just a different kind of a job. So it's still at the bottom here, but it's got a little special thing here. Pastors have a tendency to put it like 1.1, where the work of God is the same as God, at least in priority. So everything under God gets set aside at a lower priority. We've had lots of pastors' kids that we've talked to, and they never saw their dad. He was always taking care of somebody at the church. The church came before his own family. And in Timothy, somewhere it talks about, if you're going to be a pastor, you got to have your house in order. You got to be there. Take care of your stuff first. And that it still goes back to the beginning of the pyramid and everything. So ministry is just another job. You have to have your house in order. And really, your first ministry, as Christians, we're all ministers. I just mentioned that in the service today. Everybody that's a Christian is really called to minister to somebody. Your first ministry is to your spouse. You should be praying for them. You should be praying with them, making sure their needs are met before you deal with anybody else. Right? It says, love your neighbor as yourself. Your spouse is part of you. You're one flesh, right? So you got to be taking care of that one flesh before you take care of your neighbor. If you're not taking care of you and loving you, how can you love on somebody else the way God would want you to? So, again, God, marriage, children, everybody else, job, ministry. And whenever we counsel anybody, we're always looking to see what's out of order here. We hear all kind of stories, but basically something's out of order. We get a lot more detail about what it is that's out of order, but basically, is God not high enough? Is the spouse not high enough? Are the kids too high? What's going on here? Or is the ex too involved, being the vindictive ex that many are? Not everybody is. Some are actually better off divorced than they are married.
Friends.
That's
Maybe friends.
That's rare. All right. So that's the pyramid. Just another representation of it. Again, it's 1 through 6, and the explanations. All right. Now, some other stuff here. Again, the first priority relationship here is our vertical relationship with Christ. Worry about yours. Don't be somebody else's vertical relationship police.
Like your spouse. Not responsible.
You got enough issues yourself to deal with. Take care of that, and pray for your spouse. And if you're doing this correctly, you're going to say, Lord, help me be what you want me to be. And what can I do to help my spouse be what you want him to be, not what I want him to be, right? But it's so much easier to try to fix somebody else because you don't have to worry about your stuff.
You don't have to admit you're doing anything wrong.
Yeah, it's the speck in my eye and the log in yours, the log in mine and the speck in yours, right? Forget this big steak sticking out of my face here. You got a splinter in your eyelid there. Let's take care of that. It's insignificant what their thing is, but yours is like, humongous. So work on your own vertical relationship with Christ. You can't really fix anyone else's. So whatever time you're spending trying to make someone else a better Christian is inappropriate for one thing, but it's a waste of time. Because as a guy anyway, I'm going to dig my heels in more the more you try to help me.
Yeah. Don't want to hear it from the spouse.
It's a pride thing. Right? So, John Bevere wrote a book a while back. It was called The Bait of Satan. One of Satan's biggest tools is in the body of Christ to get us offended by each other. Right? Being offended is the bait. It's what? Somebody says something, do you hear it a certain way that makes it offensive to you? Sometimes people they hear something, they get offended, but they didn't really process it correctly. The person didn't mean anything offensive. They just said something, but the way you heard it triggered something in you. And so now you're offended. So now you have to let it go. You have to forgive them for whatever happened. You go through that whole process just because you heard it wrong. Or maybe you heard the right words, but there was something in you that from the past that triggered something else. So
well, that's a good place where you can ask the spouse. Right at the moment, I need to ask a question. This is what I think I just heard you say. Is this what you meant to say? That can stop a lot of arguments right there. Give the other person a chance to restate how they meant it. Because how you heard it was wrong, and they didn't mean it that way. And they go, okay, thank you, now I understand. And that settles a whole lot of things. Instead of just hearing it, getting upset about it, and let it fester and, build up, and then somebody blows up. But it would have been stopped if right at first you said, I just need to clarify what I just think I heard you say. And, Larry and I used to do that ourselves. So we know those issues, and they can be pretty hurtful. But you do need to stop it and discuss them right then and there.
And the biggest thing is your delivery and your tone of how you say it,
True.
asking for clarity.
Right.
Do not ask snappy,
Right.
but ask gently.
Mm-hmm.
Then the delivery of it comes across that much better and is
True.
received on the other end, as not to put your partner on the defensive.
Right.
That's the key to it all.
You guys have anything to add to that?
No,
Sorry,
that's a
honey.
great point, because
Because you've been teaching it.
yeah, and it's been said that 70% of communication is nonverbal.
True.
So
Yeah.
a lot of times the words that come out of your mouth aren't the whole message of what's being said. So,
Right.
so it's
Absolutely.
very
Good point.
careful. You have to be very careful to wrap that whole packaging. kind
most of us are
yes.
looking at your face, not listening to what you're saying.
Correct.
So we see the look on your eyes or something, and it's like, ooh, I feel like I'm being attacked here.
Right.
You didn't even hear what was said.
Right, I'm working on my response 2
Yeah.
words into whatever you're saying.
Right.
Exactly.
That's
Already.
And that's part of the offense, right?
Yeah.
You're already, that emotion is coming up just from the look on their face.
Mhm.
And they haven't even said anything yet, but you know it's coming, right?
And we point out to the guys a lot of times in that area too, is saying, a lot of times, and the gals, you don't need to listen to the words. Try to really figure out what is he saying or she's saying. What is the heart really saying? What are they really trying to convey here to me? You know, what,
That's so good.
you know, I'm not really understanding, you know, so even if you ask the question, okay, this is what I think I heard you say, and if you still don't have clarity on it, you're still kind of inside thinking, I don't know. But you kind of have to even ask them, say, you know, these words aren't matching up. What are you really trying to tell me? You know, just lay it out there for me so I know where your heart is, why you're even talking about this. So communication is, as you're saying, is a big part,
Man.
big part.
And the key word that Mama Carol said is know their heart. Know your spouse's heart. They're not your enemy.
Right.
That's the first and foremost thing. They're not your enemy. You're just going through something temporary. And we have to remember that this is temporal. It's not a condition that's going to remain the same. Okay? So know their heart and back up for a minute and then come back with a gentle approach. It really clears the air, because you ever walk into a room and it's a spirit, right? Because you can walk into a room and someone's been arguing, you feel it. I don't care who you are, right? So it's a little chilly in there, right? So this is why we have to de-escalate ourselves and ask for clarification from our spouse, knowing all along that this person loves me, but we're going through something. So de-escalate and come at them with a gentle approach. Key is a key, and it'll change everything. You can get out of most arguments within 5 minutes or less if you do that.
Right.
And look in their eyes. Like, don't look at their face. Look into their eyes. Hard to argue and be mad at your spouse when you look in the beautiful eyes, right? It's hard. That's all I'm saying.
Especially when you hear the words
You know,
about it.
we had a thing 15, 16 years ago now, but those first few months was hell. I mean, we
For everybody.
discovered what spiritual warfare was.
Oh, yeah.
But what saved us was our counselors told us right off the bat, marriage is spiritual warfare, and your spouse is not your enemy.
That's it.
That saved us.
You said they're lying. We feel like
it
we're
sure
each
seemed
other's-
like she was the enemy. You know? I mean,
I
it got
can't
pretty
stand
ugly.
her right now.
Very ugly at times.
I
But
don't believe you.
when you understand you're one flesh and Satan is the enemy who wants to kill, steal, and destroy, it's a whole lot easier to come together and pray, or, you know, at least, you know, you have a safe word, like we would say, hey, we got to focus,
Yeah.
you know, because she would lose focus, get upset with me for something I said or did, and just,
Yeah.
to me it was like this, and to her it was like that, right? So we had to try to come together and shrink this thing.
Yeah.
And that is a good point. We had a
like being in
safety
the
net.
fog.
We had a code. And if any of us were out anywhere and one of us felt uncomfortable, all we had to do was go to our spouse and say that word, and there would be no questions asked. You would leave. And we used to help one of the other married classes at, when it was Phoenix First, and we mentioned that in his married class, and he said, I've never heard of that, but he says, I think we're gonna go ahead and come up with a word just in case. And the next week we were there to help them teach the class again, and he said, you know what? He says, we had to use that word. After we left here, we went to a family picnic or something, and we had to use that word. And somebody in the family said something to make my wife feel very uncomfortable. And she came up to me and said whatever the word was, Starbucks or whatever. And he looked at her, are you kidding me? And she says, no, I'm very serious. And she repeated the word again, and they left. And then when they got in the car, she explained to him what was going on. So everybody find a safety net, a word, a code, something that will relay to your spouse that something is making you feel uncomfortable and you need to get out of there. And it's the one we did use is focus, because I was the one that just kept getting irate all the time. Well, if this happened, then how come that happened? You know, being the woman, you have to explain to me this and this and this. But 4 months, like he said, of hell we really went through after 23 years of marriage, and only 3 small arguments in 23 years. And then our marriage almost fell apart. We just celebrated 40 years, and we just celebrated 41 years from the night we met. We still celebrate the night that we met. But, you know, those are things you learn. And we're not here to point fingers at anybody. We're here because we've lived this stuff. We know what works, what doesn't work. And we can help you. And we're trying to get the word out to as many people and couples as we can. People getting ready to get in a relationship, or people in a relationship, young marrieds. We even have mature marrieds in our class, and say, well, where were you 25 years ago when I became a blended family? I didn't have this information. Well, we didn't have it either. We had to learn it and go through it ourselves. But anyway.
Yep. Okay, so give up your right to be offended. One of the first things that should come into your mind is, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. If it helps, when somebody does something stupid, just think of them as being the idiot. And then you can laugh about it. But
Not in front of them.
why not?
No.
Then they can be offended.
No.
But that was Jesus on the cross. He had never done anything wrong, no sin in his life, and they were still killing him because he was exposing the sin in their lives, basically. So he still said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They didn't get the big picture. They didn't really understand why he was there. They were still looking for something else. And this is not what they were looking for. You know, they were looking for more of a, you know, a physical king, you know, more of a political Messiah more than a spiritual one. So Jesus did what he came to do. He died on the cross for our sins, and we're saved through faith in him for what he did on our behalf. But forgiveness is what sets you free. And one of the easiest ways to stay in a state of forgiveness is not picking up the offense in the first place. If somebody says something to you, you say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do? Or do you get upset because you picked up the offense? Like, you know, a bottle of water or something, they set it in front of you. That's the offense. Are you going to just leave it lay there or sit there and not be offended? Or are you going to pick it up and now you own it? And if you pick it up and own it, now you have to deal with it, and you have to confess the sin of being angry and all that kind of stuff, and then have to go through that whole process of letting go and forgiving them for whatever it was. But if you don't even pick it up in the first place, you're done. Right? So the trick is to try to not pick up the offense in the first place. There's lots of opportunities to be offended, but if you're practicing, I like to call it pre-forgiveness, there's just certain people that you have to deal with on a regular basis that just tick you off. If, you know, especially at work or some kind of a job or something, it's just in their nature to do something stupid every day that messes with you. But if you forgive them ahead of time, you know it's coming. When it does, it's like, yeah, I knew it was there. No big deal. One of the things that really holds a marriage together is praying together daily. Again, it's part of that number one thing on the pyramid, that vertical relationship. Prayer is what keeps that vertically in good standing. But it creates intimacy. And it creates intimacy with the one you pray to, which is God, the one you pray with, which is your spouse, and the ones you pray for, which should also include your spouse and your kids and your extended family, maybe some coworkers, or even your pastor, for that matter. But it brings you closer together because now you're basically on the same page vertically. So you got those three submission things kind of all working together. You're both vertically in line. You're treating each other with equality and respect. It's equality in God's kingdom is equal in value, not equal in purpose or calling, any of those kind of things. It's, here in America, equality is equal opportunity. Nobody said anything about an equal outcome. So, to me, that's what equality is. It's, I have as much of a chance as anybody else to do what I want to do. But I don't have to have the same outcome as anybody else. That's really more up to God. So, but when you pray together daily, that's really the glue that holds something together. It's really hard to be angry at somebody if you're praying with them. And if you do that on a regular basis, there's even less opportunity to be angry, right? Because you're together, you're one, right? Edify one another. Somewhere in Ephesians 4, I think it is, it talks about, let no corrupt speech come out of your mouth, but only that which edifies one another. I keep thinking of like the parent that has their kid at the toy store, and then the kid's having a tantrum. Not your kid, that's the other person's kid in the other aisle, that's having the tantrum. And the things you might hear from the parent trying to get their kid to stop doing the tantrum, it's not always edifying, right? Sometimes you want to just go over there and slap them. But in a marriage, you should be edifying each other, looking for opportunities to edify one another, right? If you're very critical, if you have a critical spirit, nobody wants to be with that. Who wants to be criticized all the time? Nobody I know. But if you're looking for opportunities to say something positive, to edify, we never get off the phone without saying I love you, never leave the house without saying I love you, but I like to edify. It's easy for me.
And serve.
And we have a contest usually to see who can outserve each other. But being the gentleman that I am, I let her win.
He likes to be served.
Ephesians 4:29. I was just talking about that. But no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. Like at the toy store, you don't want to hear the crap that's coming out of somebody else's mouth on the other side of the aisle. It hurts. It hurts the spirit. Because it's just not right. You feel bad for the kid getting chewed out. So, pray together daily, edify one another. And that's it. That's about right.
Okay.
So, any comments, questions on this first chapter? Helpful?
Very. Yes.
Great. Next week is going to be on what is a blended family. We're going to be talking about all kind of flavors of blended.
Yep, there's several different kinds of blending.
It's not just remarriage. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So hopefully y'all come back next week. Again, I want to thank Kenyatta for being here with Christian Living Radio and Christian Living TV. Been recording and doing some video work. We will be doing Facebook Live going forward again this semester. So if you can't make it here in the class, or you're not comfortable being in a group of people, it'll be on Facebook,
Or
Blended
just-
Families Ministry.
And if your spouse can't make it, or you have other
Yeah.
friends and relatives that need to hear it, tell them, you need to go to the website, well, the Facebook page so they can play it. Tell them which Facebook, because you've got
Well,
3
it's-
pages.
Blended Families Ministry on Facebook is our page. Our website is blendedfamiliesministry.org. Our books and stuff are out there. If anybody wants to help the ministry out, there's a donation page there. But anyway, and our stuff is also broadcast on ChristianLivingRadio.com.
.com. It's and we do live feed on Spreaker.
Spreaker. It's on Spotify, iHeartRadio, the podcast, the audio,
37
the class.
different, 38 different outlets. So you can find it anywhere.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
not.
we're glad to be here again. It seems like it's been forever since we've been doing this.
I wanna have some Q&A, or at least some comments, because we still have a few minutes here. You guys, because I don't want to say the names, you guys haven't been in this class for a while. What are the comments coming through again in the first class? Or just being in the class again?
Well, because it's been so long, we
I know.
kind of haven't been practicing that. So, it's kind of nice to come back and see what we should be doing, because things fell by the wayside, you know. And so it's nice to come back and see how it's supposed to be done, and see where we have, not issues, but you know, where we have our little arguments and stuff,
Sure.
and the cause of that. And so, yeah, it makes it very clear how we should be.
A lot of people use these classes, and I'm sure you guys found it when you started teaching, as accountability. They know that things aren't right, but when they see and hear the teaching every week, yeah, we gotta hold ourselves accountable. We have to be in those classes each week. We know we're not doing it right, but we need to hear it again and see it being done again, and that's great. You, sir, do you have any you want to add to her comments?
It's been the years that we haven't been to this particular class, so there's been additional members added to our family.
I know your grandparents.
You know, we
Woo!
got grandchildren, our older kids are getting older. You know, I had 2 of my kids over yesterday. We've kind of adopted another one that's going to ASU from Michigan. She came over yesterday. So this relates to us so much because our family continues to grow, and we're interacting with each other's children and grandchildren
Right.
like you won't believe. So it's like we're doing okay, but it's nice to be able to see this again and say, okay, how can I do something different with relation to our children and what we're currently doing. But yeah, it's wow. You know, it's been 5 or 6 years since we've taken this class.
I was thinking 3. Oh my God, 6
Yes.
years.
Yeah.
You know, I keep reaching out to
Children.
you, all the events we
Oh
have.
my God, you always do.
I
Carol.
do. I
know,
just
you're so
come to
good
the
about
roses
that.
and chocolate. Come to the Christmas
Yes.
party. Come to this. Come to that. Because we're always praying for you guys. And then I hear weddings planned, babies coming. So we're getting the baby shower. Oh my gosh, I can't keep up with these
Yes,
guys.
I know, we can't either.
So we're so glad you're
Yes.
back in the class with us, and look forward to having you come back each time. That's awesome. And bring some of the kids with you that are married and stuff, so they hear it too. So awesome. Do you have any comments on? I don't know if you've ever been to a class like this. Did any of the information we said today help? Anything that might be coming up or that you've been through, or?
Well, yeah, because, you know, I came up from a Mormon family,
Okay.
and, you know, Mormons have their different beliefs, but anyways, me and my husband, he got baptized in a Mormon church, longer there, you know, he tells me that he's learned a lot from me because, you know, his family never went to church. His mom never told him I love you. They never prayed, none of that. And, you know, he tells me a lot that, you know, that I've learned a lot from you. And I told him I was gonna come to this class because we need some type of guidance. We need some type of boundaries to where certain things, you know, prime example, 2 weeks ago, he said something that, you know, he needs to put a boundary around his heart. I took it the wrong way. I said, okay, well, you're putting a boundary around your heart, so that means maybe I need to back up a little bit, or, you know, instead of, you know, asking him, like, Mike, you know, what does this mean to you? We've been on and off together for 30 years. And, you know, we're trying to really make it work this time because
30 years is a long time, you don't wanna throw that away.
right,
Awesome.
right.
Well, hopefully he will come with you sometime. He can hear this. You can go to the website on Facebook, not website, but Facebook, and let him hear the class, what's been talked in the class.
That's the reason why I was taking notes.
Okay, awesome, great. You guys, who we have tried to get into our classes for years, comments, and I know you have been into, I believe you came to the premarital class, and I know one year you came very late to the Roses and Chocolate, but you did come. That's our big event we have in February every year. But what are your comments from today's teaching, you guys? Who's going first?
I think it's great because it's a refresher of just where God's place is in your life, and He is supposed to be first. And if He is not there, it can wreak havoc in your house. And so, you know, it's a good refresher to have for those who know where He belongs. And then sometimes life gets in the way. Sometimes life issues will cause you to forget where that place is. And so it's a good refresher coming to this course to remember where his place is.
Okay. And your spouse, would you care to comment?
I don't really have a whole lot to say, so, and we've been together for 6 years, we've been married for 2.5, and we still haven't blended. So it's been a very difficult several years, and I'm very worn out. So I'm hoping that by coming, we get a better understanding of how we blend and try to make a family after so many years, and fix it for this broken group here.
I know you guys have had a lot of extra challenges, work schedules and sickness, I believe, in there for a while and stuff like that. So yes, life gets in the way sometimes of what we think our goals are. They get messed up. We have to keep changing when we're gonna be able to reach those goals, but you never gave up. And you're still here and you're still together, and that's, God sees that, and God does reward that. And we're just, Larry and I are really thankful you guys are in the class. Thanks for coming. And you guys still live in Peoria? Is that where you are? Or
Glendale.
Glendale?
Yeah, Glendale.
Okay. You guys, as teachers,
Well, one of the things that I enjoyed today, and I found out we can't always be teachers, we need to be students at times.
right?
We pick things up also, and the reminders, and one of the things that when I hear others say, well, we've been away, when you was a kid in school, sometimes when you did something, the teacher would make you go up on the board and write it 100 times, I will not do this, or I will do this. And it's the same thing with class. If we're not there constantly, we will fall away.
Mhm.
And we're an easy target for the enemy. And especially right now in these difficult times,
Sure.
in these classes, we learn the armor. We learn how to protect the unity of the family.
True.
The family is the number one thing that will be attacked.
Right.
So that is our number one concern is, uniting the family and being strong. And we can't do that on our own. That's why the Lord created a group
True.
of His family,
Very good.
brothers and sisters. We help each other. We listen to one another, and we get our strength there. Even though we have our spouses still in the group. And another thing that I always realize and hopefully help others is to sometimes, we get very busy with life. The enemy loves that. He loves to throw some importance at you. Well, I gotta be there. I can't be here. Or I gotta do
Distraction.
this. Or
Right.
I have this issue. I can't be there. I learned to say, the heck with all of that. I have to go to my study. I need to be there. Because ultimately at the end, God, it's not gonna matter that you took care of that or you took care of this. What's gonna matter is your relationship with God
Absolutely.
and how your relationship was with the family. Because that's one of His, what do we call it? His sacred things that He made: marriage, family, communion with Him. Those are things that God made. Those are the things that are important, not really our jobs, our problems. God didn't make that.
True.
That belongs to the enemy. And one of the things I found out was that I learned the difficult way was when I say, you know what, that problem's gonna be there tomorrow, but I need to be at that class. When I ignore that and listen to this, it's amazing how God becomes the driver in that automobile, and you're just sitting back and He just drives you all the way.
That's awesome.
If you try
Good
to
points.
ride and drive that problem, that issue, you're only gonna keep coming back to it over and over. I remember one time we prayed to God and He said to me, I'll take care of it, but you need to sit back and just let me take care of it. And when I would try to take care of it, it would just become a big mess, and it was like God would say, how's that working out for you? You know, you wanna take care of it, how's it working out for you? So these classes and being together is probably, if I had to advise somebody, you need to go always, always. The problems will be there tomorrow.
True. Do you have something you would like to add?
Yeah, I think just kind of add to Deborah's that God created the church because I think one of the reasons He knew we couldn't go toe to toe with Satan by ourselves. You know, Jesus was the only one that could do that out in the desert,
Absolutely.
and He used the power of the Word. So I don't think it's a coincidence or the virus that has locked us out of worship the last few years. You know, it is the spiritual warfare, months.
True.
And the sooner we can get back to congregating and
Together.
having one voice towards Him, the better. And it's the same in marriage, you know. You can't isolate yourself and your problems. You'll get crushed, so.
Awesome. Good points. Would you like to add something?
Well, no, because I'm really happy to be here. I heard about it. I just recently got married back in March, right before the quarantine craziness happened.
Oh wow, newlywed, yay!
So me and my husband, I have 2 children from a previous marriage, and my husband, he's Pastor Tim, the kids pastor. So he doesn't have children, so now he has 2, and so it is very important to me that we can, know how to take on this new journey. Definitely is something new all the time,
It's true.
So really happy to be here to see what we can learn and keep growing as a family.
Awesome.
I like what you said about marriage is a warfare. You really have to pray. There's always something that you have to intercede for your children, especially when the ex family, they're not believers. So your children are involved in 2 homes that are completely different, and that's
Sure. Oh yeah.
to me that's my main thing. How to protect my children and help them, in the spiritual life, and how to grow in God when they have different beliefs in the other home. So
Right. Awesome. Well, we're glad you're in the class. That's awesome. We look forward to being able to help, and definitely, equipped you guys for what's ahead, and, we're just thrilled that each and every one of you are here. We have, probably another 12 that were supposed to be here. We do know that one of the couples, they were in the service with us at 9. We usually go to the 9 o'clock service, and then we'll be doing the 11 o'clock teaching in here. But the other couple that came with us, their kids, older kids, usually come over for dinner. And today they changed, and they said, we're coming for lunch. So naturally, they couldn't come to the class. They said, we gotta go rush to get lunch and fix it, because they were gonna be here in the class. The others, I have no idea. We have one other that's a little older, and they have never been to our class. We've known them for about 20 years. They just moved back here about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, I'm not sure. And they wanted to be in the class, so they'll be coming, but they come all the way from way out in Surprise. And the others are pretty well local that were gonna be here. So there should be more next week. I hope you guys felt comfortable in your distancing in here. That made you feel all right. And then we had somebody from the Grace Walk Church said, well, do we have to wear masks? And we said, that is purely optional. That's whatever you feel comfortable doing. We're not gonna be upset with you if you don't have one on, and we're not gonna be upset with you because why are you wearing a mask? We don't do that. It's what you feel comfortable with. That's what's important to us, okay? And I guess we close on time, so we need to do a closing prayer. Do you want to do it, honey, or do you want to ask somebody else? So we hope you all got something out of it.